Well, thank you, and good evening, and I'm delighted that all of you would take time from your busy lives to listen to me. There's far more qualified people to talk about this than I am, but I'm always happy to offer my thoughts to each of you. I want to acknowledge a few of you for your involvement with the Sheriff's Department, and I see one of my colleagues from the airport police here, and I'm happy he's here. Also, Father from the Catholic Church, he and I are brothers in this effort to have interfaith harmony. And I'm kind of struck by this theme of the aftermath of September the 11th and how do we look ahead to the future. And my belief is simple, that we as a society in America are blessed because of our diversity, and this great nation was founded on the premise of diversity. First premise in the Constitution, as it was being written by the forefathers, ensured religious diversity. So I think it's appropriate for us to start there with what the past has authorized legally for the American people, that we are not a monotheistic society. We are a diverse theistic society. We believe that there is a right for the right to worship, and we believe that God has a universal meaning in this nation, and it's constitutionally guaranteed. So, the future on a post-9/11 status is that all governments, local, state, or national, have an obligation to guarantee religious diversity. There's no choice here. If you don't want to live in this country because of its religious diversity, then you have a choice not to. But you don't have a choice to change this nation's laws, because our Constitution is what it is, and it's been working since our founding fathers created this nation. A lot of Americans don't understand that principle, quite frankly. There are candidates that are running for office, and some are even running for the president's position, and they have a very narrow view of some of that religious diversity, which is unfortunate because the first point of my future idea, in other words, what is the future supposed to hold for us, is the idea that we value our legal system here. You know, I'm a law enforcement officer and a protector of society's rights. So the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, civil rights, and human rights are all part of what makes America a very special place to live. The difficulty is that we've had political experiences that line up in denying people these rights. That goes back to slavery. That goes back to the realities of the women's not having the right to vote. It goes back to the way immigrant societies, particularly the Chinese, were relegated to little areas that were filthy in cities, which evolved into Chinatowns that we now think of as curious places to eat Chinese food in. But the truth is that they were filthy parts of Los Angeles in the city area, and there were people who were not allowed to vote, not allowed to marry, not allowed to own land, and they were definitely not allowed to be American citizens. But we needed them to build our railroads. So the point is not to regress so far back, but to send a cautious warning to people who are elected that you must live up to the oath of your office. Now, the oath of office that I take as elected sheriff is the same oath of office President Obama took, the same oath of office that senators take, the same oath of office that Congress members take, the same oath of office that governors take, city councils take, and school district employees. It isn't any different. And it basically includes words like, I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in our case, the Constitution of the State of California, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, without any purpose of evasion or any purpose of what you would call mental reservation. You see, this is an interesting oath, because any time you run across as a citizen a person that's in an elected office and they're busy undermining a particular religion, they are essentially evading the oath of their office. They are evading that very oath. That's why it appalls me that even today, when we try to build a harmonious future for all Americans, there are certain elected officials that don't get it, that they are denying the public that elected them the promise of not evading our Constitution. And therefore, they're literally not supporting our Constitution. So we got an education need. We have to have Americans understanding their own laws. That's order number one. Now, when it comes to the goodness of religion, I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done for us to understand each other's religious experiences in the context of their goodness. And I think that that was done post 9/11, before even post 9/11. I have always felt that the faith community helps the public be safe, that the values that are within each religion assist us as a greater public need to keep crime from going out of complete control. And morality does matter. I mean, there is a need within all faiths for the followers to operate by certain rules. And the theological rules are not necessarily in conflict with the government's rules for behavior. They're somewhat consistent. And so as a result, many people don't commit crime because of their faith. Many people are not violent because of their faith. And faiths of all that I know of are not proponents of violence. It is counter God to be a violent human being. I believe that there is a lot of individuals who want to bring God into violence, but there's no such thing as proof that God is instructing anyone through any faith to be violent. And so therein is one of the challenges by those who use violence and then make the religion a conspirator with that person, as though the religion has something to do with that violence, when in fact it's my belief in all the faiths that I've looked at, and I've looked at a lot of the faiths that are guiding the behavior of their followers, and I have yet to find one that uses violence as a principal solution to the followers of that faith, when the followers of that faith have a desire for violence. Now, what's the indicator here is that we need religious harmony to be more than just a statement. We need to practice religious harmony. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that it's not against any one religion to be willing to go and visit somebody else's religion. In fact, what makes it interesting with the post 9/11 period is that most Americans don't even know what the Quran says. And many Muslims don't even take time to read the Quran. They follow the rules that are most social in the sense of the prayer requirements, but are not really delving into the breadth of the entire Quran, which refers to Mary, the mother of Jesus, rather specifically in the Quran, and also refers to Moses and Judaism and the Israelites as a part of the belief system that the prophet, peace be with him, had put within the Quran in terms of the teachings. Now, many Muslims don't even know this, that to be an effective follower of the faith, you have to honor Christianity and Judaism as well, and bring that into the fold of your sensitivities as a human being, and not see those faiths in an enemy-type context, because it is not part of what the prophet sought in the following of those of the Quran. Okay, and so the future has to have a clarification priority, not just of the average citizen in the United States, but it has to be of government leaders as well, because they're the ones that are bringing in some of the biases against a particular faith into their own rhetoric when it comes to how they themselves want to assume an office, because they think that preying on the fears of the public over one religion is a good way to get votes. And to me, it's very unchristian-like. Now, I happen to be a Christian and a Catholic, and I believe that Christ is the ultimate model of humility. And one who uses Christianity in an aggressive way against another faith. Now, bear in mind, in Christianity, Christ was a Jew. Okay, Christ never renunciated himself in terms of his heritage, but what he said essentially to the society that existed at the time is that there's another way to do things that I would like to represent. That love your fellow man. Start there. Thou shalt not kill. As you know, the Catholic Church is very adamant, the Christian Church is very adamant against the death penalty in the view of the Bible's teachings about Christ's word. But nonetheless, there are civil deaths that are authorized, and we understand that. But there is not a violent part to Christianity, and there's not a violent part really of any religion. But there are violent individuals who want to rewrite the religions, and they basically are trying to push that religion into a context that will scare other people and drag other people into a place where they're not willing to create the bridge that is necessary to live peacefully and trustfully with thy fellow man. Am I making any sense at this point? So the future, to me, is not only does America have to do a better job in educating its own public, but the faith community needs to get stronger with the exchanges and the programs that they can share together and open up their doors across the board. That anyone's welcome to come into any other person's place of worship for the sake of an exchange experience. And I have an interfaith council of my own that is made up of all the faiths in the county, and we're trying to achieve that harmony rather than just talk about it. And I'm very pleased that we've been able to meet very regularly. Bishop Edward Turner is the executive director that does all the heavy lifting. But I've been in mosques, I've been in synagogues, I've been in ashrams, I've been in Christian churches, both Protestant and Catholic. I've been in Buddhist temples. My wife happens to be a Buddhist, so I'm kind of dealing with it in a more personal way of interfaith harmony. And the idea of understanding what God is all about. Now, let me just pause about that point. What is God all about? Well, God is about creation, obviously. Everything that lives has a godly reason, not just human beings. God is about time that you and I don't understand. You know, there's like 500 billion years. Can you imagine the amount of time that is that Earth has been around? That's what the anthropologists and the archaeologists are saying. And when they pull up evidence of life and start examining DNA and all that other stuff, they start testing how long this fossil has been in existence. and it's rather long. And so if it's attributable to a God, then God is not one you measure in time, or is not something you can measure in time. Our time is 80 years, maybe if we're lucky, or maybe 100 if you're really super lucky. So we have no concept of time. We just waste time mostly in many areas in our lives. We're not busy creating another universe. We're just busy raising our own families, and we're trying to do our jobs to the best of our ability. But we're not really taking God's perspective on much of what we do, other than we're trying to do it with a sense of dignity, and that's God's direction too. But think about this. If God is the creator, then what does God love doing? Creating. And if the living things are in the millions, the variety of species that live, whether it's plant-related, animal-related, insect-related, fish-related, human-related, then you know that this person or this entity has huge desire to create. Now, in our simplest way as human beings, we have a desire to create. The question is, do we have a desire to create something beautiful or to create something ugly? Violence is ugly in every form that it exists. There is no such thing as beautiful violence, even if it's done for the right reason. It's all ugly. All right? But we do it for whatever human reasons we do it. But if God loves to create, then what is our job about God's creations? Now, there's no such thing as loving God and not loving your fellow man. If God spent all the energy and imaginativeness and creativity, and whatever it is it took to create the universe and create Earth and then create us, if God took all that time to make you and me, and we're the only living thing that can even think of a God. I can tell you the fish don't think about God. And neither do insects, and neither does anything else, including plants. There's no such thing as consciousness to the extent on anything other than us. We're the only living thing that we know of that knows and believes that there's a God. But every other living thing is a miracle too. We're the miracle of miracles. But every other living thing is a miracle too. So then how do you honor God? Beyond your religion only. How do you honor God? You honor God by loving everything that God has created. And if you can't do that, then you're acting like God. You think you can choose what to love in the way that I will never love this, I'll never love that, I'll never love snakes. Well, I probably don't love snakes that much myself, but the point is I can understand their perfection. You get what I'm saying here? I hope I'm making sense. That where we get caught up is that religion should be an expanding experience for us. Come on in, please.
Thank you.
Bless you. That's all right. Religion should be an expanding experience about the greatness of God. Well, if you're leaving out the oceans, and you're leaving out the fish, and you're leaving out the plants, and you're leaving out the desert, and you're leaving out water, and you're leaving out anything else that lives, you're not even close to God. God didn't just make us. We are in the paradise of God's creation. And yet we don't think that way. Somehow we just don't think that way. We think about the narrowest form of what God is. And so all I'm asking about this post 9/11 thing is that we got a lot of work to do with each other. This is why I focusing a lot on my time on international goodwill and within our own county goodwill. That goodwill should be the goal of all Americans. If you don't understand the Quran, why don't you go to a mosque and visit it and talk to the imam and talk to a member. And the lady that was in Orange County that the LA Times wrote about that is outreaching, this is what we have to do. Not just the Islamic society, but all of the Christian societies and the Jewish society. We have to outreach. We have to invite people we don't even know to be a part of our own experience. We have to do what the Pacifica Institute is doing in a privatized way here in Los Angeles. Once we get into that reality that all people have common fears and common hopes and common realities, then we become a true brotherhood and sisterhood, and we're acting in the favor of God. So I don't want to. I thought you'd probably heard a lecture about we got to have more intelligence, we got to have more military tools, we got to have more law enforcement doing this and that, and we got to go into this thing and make sure that the neighbor is all secure and checked out, and on and on and on and on. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my reality about humanity and what I know human beings are capable of doing. And all human beings are capable of getting along. And all human beings are capable of reducing violence. And that's what the future has to have.